Hello Sagittarius friends, I'm Annie Botticelli and welcome to my Sagittarius October 2021 Astrology Must Knows. Definitely go to anniehelpsyou.com where you will see the interface for all of the free goodies that I make for you each month. I have blogs and podcasts and all kinds of things, free courses. You want to see all of it and you go to anniehelpsyou.com to see it. If you forget that website address, you can click on the More button underneath the video and it will reveal all kinds of things, including that site. This video is for you if Sagittarius is your sun. I have a Sag sun too with you, okay? Sag is your moon, Sag is your rising, Sag is your Venus or Mars or any Sag placements you have. This report is going to have a piece of your astrological picture. Also, if you're a late degree Sag, which I also am, then I also suggest, so late degree means December 11th through the rest of the sign or 20 to 29 degrees. If you're watching because you know your placement degree. I also suggest that you listen to my Capricorn reports each month because late degree friends have a more complex read. You have pieces that are in the Sag report and you have pieces that are in the Cap report, okay? So what do we have going on this month? The first thing we have to talk about is Jupiter is going direct. Thank goodness. Oh my gosh. If you know anything about Jupiter, it is our ruler and it rules optimism and flow and expansion and all the things that make us Saggy and the things that we love are ruled by Jupiter. And when Jupiter goes retrograde, we really feel it. Almost to the day you feel very often. You're not as excited about things. You're not as optimistic. You're not as motivated. Now, Jupiter retrograde can bring things that you planned along the Saggy lines into fruition for you, and that can definitely happen. But the benevolence and the luck and the expansion and the flow and all of those things that Saggies just love so much go retrograde. And sometimes we feel more depressed or, like we're not as protected by the universe, which isn't true, but it's just this feeling of vulnerability really comes when Jupiter is retrograde, and Jupiter goes direct on October 18th, and we're going to be kissing that day. Make a big kiss on your calendar at that time, okay? So that's the first big must know for Sag. The theme of this month is the big wake up, because not only is Jupiter waking up, meaning going direct from its retrograde, Pluto, Saturn, and Mercury are also going to be going direct. So we've got a complex month in the way that a lot of it's covered with this retrograde energy. And I have a really nice visual and a segment that I'm going to put in after we talk about Sag specific things that talk about what the retrograde energies are good for and the dates that we're really focusing on that and what the direct energies are good for, including this golden period of opportunity we have coming in November that you want to gear your efforts towards preparing for in October. We'll talk about all of that because you're not going to have an open window like this for the whole rest of the year because we're going to have Venus going into retrograde. That's a whole other story, but I have a visual and a timeline where we'll talk about those things later. So it's not going to be missed. We're just going to talk about some Sag specific things first. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so it's the big wake up. And not only do we have all of these things waking up, we also have eclipse season beginning 4 to 6 weeks before the eclipse. The first eclipse is November 19th. 4 to 6 weeks before that put us right at the beginning of October, which is when eclipse season starts. This is very, very important for Sagittarius because we're going to be wrapping up the Sagittarius eclipse cycle that started in May. Really, it started in March, and we know what happened in March. The world shut down. It is related partly to the eclipse cycle, not completely because it's a complex thing that happens, which I talk about in a video called, well, if you just search for Annie Botticelli coronavirus, I talk about how the astrology has created what's gone on. But anyway, that's an aside. Here we are at the end of the Sagittarius Gemini eclipse cycle, which we'll also talk about later in that segment I talked about. But this, you're going to feel the storylines that have been active for you starting to come up again strongly in October, and November, December, they're going to wrap up. Some very, very important big things are going to wrap up. And you might get some new beginnings from the Taurus, Scorpio eclipse cycle that's starting. Okay, so those are all must-knows. Something else that's a must-know for Sag is that we still have planets moving through Libra. This is very favorable for Sagittarius. This means that accord and relationship focus and help from other people and you helping other people is all going in a better flow. If there are problems that have come up, the chance for solutions have been strong, and this is all very strong in September. This is going to be a major focus for October. This is going to continue to be a focus for November. So just basically getting right with people in your relationship space. And that's also a storyline of the eclipse cycle, which is a little bit longer here. You know, the planets being in Libra and Scorpio are like September, October, November, right? But this thing with Sagittarius and the first house being accentuated and the seventh house being accentuated through eclipse cycles means the me-we. So Sagittarius have been going through a lot of goodbyes. I had to say goodbye to something that was one of my favorite things in my life in this eclipse cycle. I'm not happy about that, but that's how it goes, and that's what we're working with now. So we're working with the closing out of certain parts of cycles in relationships and the beginning of new cycles within relationships. And this is further reiterated by the planets moving through Libra and Scorpio. Okay, so we have it in the long term, we have it in the short term. But what you can do in this time, and I give you the, I dare you, I'll even dare you to do it. I dare you to make it your mission to improve all of your relationships. And I'll give you a couple of things that can really, really help with that. One thing is the Ho'oponopono, okay? So it's, let me spell this right, H''Oponopono. All right, if you put anything like that in a search, it's basically a Polynesian forgiveness prayer. Some people think of it as a Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, but it preceded from the people that populated Hawaii. It's basically a prayer that helps you to clear energy and forgive yourself and others and transform your relationships. Okay, so I really highly suggest that Sagittarius work with the Ho'oponopono. You can do it for a moon cycle. I've done it for a moon cycle at a time, focusing on a specific thing in my life, and I've seen very dramatic, fast results, including recently, okay, where I brought it back in, which is why I'm mentioning it for you. Something else that can really help you is this book called Marriage of Spirit, especially the exercises in section 2. If you just search for Marriage of Spirit, Leslie Temple Thurston, you don't even have to read the book if you don't want to. You can just do the exercises in section 2 and they will work amazingly. It's basically where we're owning everything that somebody does that annoys the crap out of us. All right, let's say there's that person in your life that just bothers you. And maybe you can come up with 80 reasons that they do things that just really chafe you, okay? By writing those things down and owning them. Now, there's more to the exercises, so I do suggest you get the book, but it's basically an ownership within somebody else that you either do those things in other ways or they're opposite. And it's an owning of everything that bothers you, which is really what astrology is about. It's a clearing of the decks. It's a clearing of the karma. It's the balancing of the polarities in life. And Sagittarius, everybody always has this opportunity, but Sagittarius are going through a major karmic cycle right now where old storylines in relationships, old ways of being with other people, with yourself, ways you've treated yourself, how you are with your body, how you walk in the world, everything is having a chance to have the decks cleared. Some of that will happen without you doing any of this inner work, okay? But if you are wanting to make the most of the potentials of this time, when you do this inner work, it facilitates what the universe is trying to offer to you. And sometimes the offerings come through challenges. The universe saying, this is still what's wrong, this is still what's wrong. What are you gonna do about it, right? And then you use the tools to do it. So that can really, really help you. And you've got a lot of short and longer term energy around completely redoing your world. Also coming up for Sagittarius at this time, major must know, is that your work sector is still being very strongly affected. And this is a nice angle for Sagittarius, so hopefully you're going to have good work things coming to fruition. If you were working on a project earlier in the year, you might find May, June, it went to sleep. Let's say you're working on publishing something. Maybe you had to do stuff in the backdrop, or maybe things that were moving forward aren't, or languages, or long distance travel, or anything Saggy, or anything in your life, period, that you were working on that just sort of cooled off. You might find it's waking up now. And that's from all of these planets waking up. But relationships are a very, very important part of your success, your focus, and your solutions to any problems. Okay. Writing is coming up in a really big way for Sagittarius because Jupiter is waking up in your third house. And this is true for all early, middle, and late degree placements. I've been showing you that sometimes these late degree, sometimes those of you in the late degree don't have an outer planet in the same house as the other earlier degrees. But for Jupiter, it's in the third house for all of you now, or influencing it, even if it's just close to it. So what that means is that Jupiter wants to wake up your writing, your teaching, your speaking, your creative forces, your creative juices, things involving your relatives, your nephews, nieces, cousins, brothers, uncles, aunts, especially those that aren't your parents or kids, like everybody else. Jupiter's expanding that. You might be having, new additions to your family. And then this also has to do with the ninth house, which again is everything Saggy, which is, the teaching and the learning and all of that. So anything in those arenas are going to be very dramatically increased, and you might find that a writing frenzy is about to happen, or if you've done past writing, that October might be the time when things are waking up to move forward with those things in your life. Okay, so I have had a lot of questions on the topic of Saturn influencing Jupiter being in the same sign, with Jupiter being all about expansion and Saturn being all about restriction. How does all of that work? So the first thing to know is that Jupiter and Saturn were in close proximity a while ago. And when they were, their effects were more pronounced. Now at this point, Jupiter's been blazing through, and it will pass on from this. At the end of December, Jupiter won't be in Aquarius anymore, but Saturn will still be there. So I see Saturn and Jupiter as the yogic principles of resistance and release and expansion and foundation. So it's true that Saturn can curb some of the enthusiasm or the expansion of Jupiter, and you will feel that, like you're carrying a bowling ball behind you and you're trying to expand and you're carrying a bowling ball. And that's kind of like Saturn's the bowling ball. But the bowling ball is making sure you don't rush into anything, take too much on, is making you get clear about your priorities, of the direction that you want to apply the expansion. It's making you ask different questions so that when that expansion occurs, it can be more long-lived in its outcome, and not be as exhaustive as it would be, because an unkept or unminded Jupiter is a crazy thing. And just look at you all, right? And me. I'll be the first to admit this. I have 9 placements in Sag. Things get out of hand very quickly if we don't have our own discipline, things keeping us in place, or somebody around us being like, you think you're getting a little out of hand, right? So Saturn is there as our friend, annoying as it may be. It's our friend in helping us to not get out of hand. And it might also help you to reframe some relationships with people who seem to be that Saturnian force for you, where you're like, just let me do my thing, just let me flow, just let me be free. And then this person or this other force is like, no, because you get out of hand and you need help. Now, the more Sages establish their own inner discipline, their own rhythms that help them to not get exhausted and not get out of hand, the less we have to be annoyed by other people or other things or other forces trying to keep us in line. Like for instance, when I'm like, say to my husband who has Virgo energies and, asks different questions than someone with 9 placements in Sag asks, when I'm like, let's drive the RV to Alaska. That sounds like a good idea to me. That's a little crazy, and I do think, honestly, that it will happen one day. But the other forces around us can ask, like, is that a good idea right now? Turns out Canada wasn't even letting us drive through Canada to get over to Alaska. So, like, the force from the outside was making my idea of what I wanted to do not going to happen. But that turned out to be a good thing because the things that did happen were better. It was a little bit much for that time. So you can kind of just see, you'll see your version of this, a person in your life or a government somewhere or something trying to hem you in. And if you change your relationship with how you see that, like maybe I'm being restricted for a reason. Maybe I'm not supposed to be doing that. Maybe I need to direct my energy somewhere else. then you can feel better and feel more true freedom rather than, you know, maybe your old definition of freedom. So those kind of things are really coming into play with the Saturnian push and pull with Jupiter. Okay, so a couple of other things to know, must-knows this month. Let's see. We do have more salty aspects again this month compared to sweet ones. This has been an annoying trend that happened in June, July, August, September, and now again in October. We will have a reprieve from this in November, but it is true now that we're going to have some speed bumps in the road. You're trying to drive along, bump, annoying jolt, even some more annoying jolts because Uranus is going to be involved in some of these inconjunct aspects, which are awkward ones. So throughout this month, you're going to have little and big jolts. But overall, we've got a lot to celebrate with support through those angles with Libra. We also have a lot to celebrate because Jupiter is waking up, and it's going to help us to be more protected or feel more protected, less vulnerable, more sure, more solid, and be more optimistic. If you have been a little bit depressed or a little bit off, you might see that your optimism and your viewpoint and things are starting to change, and that can help buoy you as we work through some of these annoying aspects. And if you haven't already signed up for my free email newsletter and you want to know the list of all the salty and sweet aspects, the dates, what happened with them, what you can expect, you definitely want to sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com, because you'll get a written report delivered into your inbox 1 month early of all of those aspects written. One other major must-know for Sagittarius, and something very much to celebrate, is that Venus is getting into our sign. Okay, so I'm very excited about this because Venus brings, you know, the energy of love and beauty and money and affection and harmony. And so when we have Venus moving through our sign, that means everybody gets a kiss. So everybody in the first 24 days of the sign, or first 24 degrees, will have their kiss from Venus in October. The last, you know, 6-ish days of the sign, you're going to have your kiss in early November. But between October and the first week in November, everybody's going to get that special kiss. And no matter what your placement is, you'll get a kiss from Venus. And the more Sag placements you have, the more kisses you'll get from Venus in this time frame. So that's definitely something to celebrate. These are quick little, usually not of major consequence boosts, but they definitely will be noticed, and it definitely brings a feeling of more harmony and flow for you at this time. Okay, so now I want to talk in detail about this golden opportunity that's about to come. I want to talk about how October is divided between retrograde energies and direct energies, what the best ways are to handle the energies in the earlier part of the month, what the best ways are to handle the energies later in the month, and we'll talk a little bit about the Venus retrograde cycle that's going to be beginning and is very relevant to how you handle your energy at this point in October. We'll give you some dates for the eclipses and talk a little bit more about the years that the new eclipse cycle have happened before, and the years that this current eclipse cycle that we're closing out have happened before for context. So let's talk about all that now. Okay, so to understand the theme, the big wake up for October 2021, it's easier, I think, to see it in a visual context, and also to understand October compared to November and December, and what we've got going on in this cluster of time will help you to better understand the energy of this month. All right, so the first thing of note that we've got going on is that these outer planets are waking up. So Pluto on October 6th, Saturn on the 11th, Jupiter on the 18th, and then we've got Mercury also waking up. This is an inner planet, but we've still been in this Mercury retrograde period, since September. So the energy for the first half or so of the month is very much retrograde, okay? And then every day, the 19th, 20th, 21st, every day we march into October, later in the month, these energies that just woke up start to get stronger. All right, so by the time we're at November 3rd, Mercury retrograde is clear, and we enter this golden period of the 3rd through the 17th before the Venus shadow period starts. Venus shadow starts November 18th, gets stronger as the month of November goes on. Venus goes retrograde on December 19th. Okay, so you can see this time between November 3rd and the 17th is this golden opening where these planets have gained a lot of momentum. Mercury is completely strong. Venus has not yet started to slip. So now that we understand this, we'll get back to some of these other pieces here. Let's talk about the retro energies and direct energies and how you use them differently. So basically, the first half of October, we'll say through, of course, the 18th, because that's when everything goes direct. It's very strong in this, and this lingers throughout October, but it starts to get lighter and lighter as the month goes on. And as the month goes on, it gets more into these energies. And then the 3rd through the 17th of November is really, really strong with this energy, okay? So in retrograde time, we want to deal with what comes up more rather than trying to do future planning or, think too much ahead. We want to clear out clutter in any area of our lives, our health, our relationships, our houses, our desk. We want to leave things unscheduled because last minute magic can show up, and the more space you have to receive it, the better. This is a fantastic time for research, not as much the big launches and decisions and agreements and all of this stuff, unless it's unavoidable, but researching these things and making, your pros and cons list, getting information so that you can strike when the iron's hot. The retro time, so, it's basically all of October, but especially through around the 18th, we want to wrap up loose ends and finish old projects. Also, retrogrades are known for confusion, where you can't see that far ahead. You're not sure about what you want to do with any of these kind of things, and if you know that that's happening, then it's okay because you know that it's likely going to clear. It's a time to be in the moment, and it's a time to honor the flow and not force anything. Now, as we get later in October, you'll start to feel the clarity coming back, especially once we get into November, the zest and ideas for new projects, things like big launches, like getting your book out, your creative babies of any sort, your big decisions, your agreements, your paperwork, your investing, your moves. Anything like that, future planning, and that back to push and initiate mode away from the don't force mode is another important change that starts to evolve as October goes on. And the more you can do these things in this November 3rd through 17th, you'll have all of the oomph of the direct motion. And I always liken this time to when the tide is going out. Retrograde is like when the tide is going in. If you try to push a message in a bottle out on the shore, to go out to the sea, it's probably going to come bobbing right back to you. That's why these things are better indicated in the retrograde time. But as we move into the direct time, it's time to put your boat afloat, to have the action of the tides going out, to put your bottle out to sea, to put all of your energy out there because you have oomph. Now, as we get into the 18th, the tides from the Venus perspective start slowly rolling in, okay? But there is quite a bit of usable, what I call usable energy for the rest of November. And I'm just giving you this little sneak peek to understand this, even though we're talking about October, because October is more in this retrograde mode. And then November is more in this direct mode, you see? So this will help you to better guide your actions in October to understand the energies of November more. But you will have some usable energy for the rest of November. You just have to use it with caution. And if you want to get a sneak peek about this, we'll talk about this more in the November report. But look for Annie Botticelli Venus Retrograde. I have a whole Venus and retrograde blog series. I've got a really great detailed video. And also my book, Planetology, How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe, has a very big section on these Venus retrograde energies. Okay, so now back to this energy in October, we also have at the beginning of the month, eclipse season is beginning, okay? Because the first eclipse is November 19th, but eclipse season starts around 4 to 6 weeks before the actual eclipse. So that places us right back here at the beginning of October. Okay, so besides this big wake up for these outer planets and Mercury, we've got eclipse season beginning. So, you know, those life-changing pieces of information, those life-changing experiences, those very big goodbyes, those very big hellos. And this is a very big wrap up because this season holds the last eclipse in the Sagittarius Gemini cycle. So what we're wrapping up here, and this energy is starting to make itself manifest in October, which is why we're talking about it now. The Sagittarius Gemini eclipse cycle has been in effect since around March 2020. And everybody remembers that month will go down in infamy when the world shut down. So things wrapping up at this time. Also, if you want to have some context, you can think back. So basically it was, the eclipse cycle was from May 2020, but again, the 4 to 6 week period started us in March through around January of 2022. Okay, so we're here in October, we're starting to get the pieces falling together of closing out this cycle. If you want to have context as to when the last time that cycle happened, the Sagittarius Gemini eclipse cycle, it was around 2010 to 2012. So you might see some similar storylines that came up at that time. Now what we're starting in this new cycle is the Taurus Scorpio eclipse cycle. And of course, we'll go into way more details about this in the November and December reports when the actual eclipses occur, but it's important for you to know these things now because the eclipse season starts in early October. So think back to the end of 2002 and to like through 2003, and then the second half of 2012 to early 2014. Then we've got now August 2021 through the end of 2023. And the reason why we have August here is because we do start to see a few months even before the eclipse cycle begins that sometimes little hints will come in. So that's very, very sensitive, you know, might be harder to see that energy. So we'll just put it back to October 2021 through the end of 2023 is the Taurus Scorpio cycle. So the things that are coming in now are going to really be big players through the end of 2023. And we'll go into details about exactly where that hits in your chart in the November and December reports. For our purposes for October, just know that it's a big wrap up of the old eclipse cycle and the big beginning of the new eclipse cycle as this eclipse season starts this month. Okay, so I've given you lots of information to help you make the most of October 2021 and beyond. If you would like even more information, definitely go to anniehelpsyou.com. That is the interface for all of the things that I do for you each month, the connection to my podcasts and my Pinterest and my school and my blogs and all of that you can find there. If you would like to be an astrologer as your profession or just to do it to help your friends and family and yourself, you will love my Becoming a Professional Astrologer Mastery course. If you think I put a lot of details into these monthly reports, month after month, year after year, you should see what goes on, the comprehensive nature of that course, which you can see at lumelife.com, L-U-M-E, life.com. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.